Hi, this is Liqian Ren, Director of Modern Alpha Wisdom Tree ETFs. Welcome to China of Tomorrow podcast series, where we navigate China, India, Japan, and the broader emerging markets with members of Wisdom Tree and other industry leaders. This is Li Chen on November 13th, 2023. Let me quickly comment on the upcoming APEC meeting between President Xi and President Biden. Chinese government's support for the economy and its housing market and its continued drag on the economy. First, as listeners who followed me on Twitter knows, I've generally been short-term positive for better U.S. China headlines. And actually, if one observes China's state media, this was already apparent for a few months. From the U.S. side, many top U.S. officials and cultural exchange programs such as Philadelphia Orchestra has visited China for the largest two economies, at least it's a meeting, so that's good news. But ultimately, what gets done is what matters, and currently the cool relationship between U.S. and China will continue. U.S. will continue to sanction Chinese companies and limit tech export. And I think U.S. is also likely for short-term things that could get done is things like U.S. approve more direct flights, and China help to limit some ingredients that's made into Mexico and become drugs and they're moved into the U.S. So these short-term issues, we do see some possibility of solve, but not long-term disputes like technology competition in Taiwan. I think right now the political environment in both sides makes it difficult for U.S. China to come up with long-term solutions. So in the short term, if there's some things gets done, it's still good. There's likely some fluffy common language on fighting climate change or cooperation on public health, but I think people know that the actual things to be done in those areas are still quite small. And ultimately, probably, the market solution is going to dominate in terms of climate instead of government solutions. But anything beyond these easy to achieve things are too optimistic. So U.S. is likely to restate its usual position on Taiwan, which I think most people in the outside China may not realize that U.S. official position is to acknowledge one China and does not support Taiwan independence. Sometimes in the media, when you hear so much report as if U.S. position is more than that, I think the official position is still this position of one China and does not support independence. But clearly on the side, U.S. is definitely more supportive of Taiwan or Republic of China, which is Taiwan's official name. So I don't think there will be quite the kind of solutions that U.S. China will have significant positive coming out of unless everybody's going to wait until January 13th, where Taiwan, or officially Republic of China in Taiwan, will have its presidential election. So December is when the presidential election in Taiwan heats up. The people likely will see more headlines. I think China just today also just released the October social finance, which is a very important statistic on overall China's economy. It grew by 9.3%. It's not too bad. However, the money, the liquid money measure, M2, grew by 10.3%. That means people are still cautiously saving. The lack of good investment opportunities is such that many are actually considering further paying down mortgages, even though the rate of mortgage now is mostly less than 4%, which is a big contrast to the U.S., which is closer to 7+. Housing market continues to drag the local economy. I think if people are thinking about paying down mortgages at lower than 4%, that just suggests the lack of
confidence in other investment returns. So I think its local government is still trying to get revenue in many other sources. Now that the land sale is much smaller. Mostly it's fines and fees. That's why in Chinese headlines you see some very unusual headlines, like the government suddenly wants to ask some money back from past benefactors of the government to cough back some money, which I think outside China probably people will be like very kind of don't quite understand, like, wow, this can be done. But in terms of China, it's an emerging market. It's not as everything as written down as in the U.S. Um, I know several people are saying housing has bottomed. My own assessment is still further weakness. Even though PBOC, the central bank, has met a few higher quality real estate firms, like one of them, Vanke, which in Chinese is Wanke, which now got full backing of the local Shenzhen government, which because they are also like 30% owner of Vanke. And Shenzhen's local government does have significant assets that could prop up their the real estate firm. But the other firm, I mean, visibly Central Garden was not in this meeting, at least not in the official release. So we don't comment on individual company stocks, but it's clear Central Garden is not in government's save list if things further deteriorate. Many second-tier cities like Hangzhou and Guangzhou, they still have limits on how, purchases where people can buy houses. This just shows, how local governments are kind of behind in acknowledging the housing weakness, which is not a surprise in a command economy like China, where government policy tends to lag. Um, in particular, local government in China are so afraid of making perceived instabilities because right now the top, leadership wants stability by all means, and because of this, many local governments are kind of lying flat, like they're trying to do the minimum, which the central government also knows to a degree, but again, if they want the local government officials to stimulate the economy, then they are also going to have to live with some of the, unseemly things that the local government does to stimulate the economy. So I think on Chinese on Chinese stimulus, in terms of government stimulus, again, I think I've written a blog before, and I try to write the blogs that has a bit of shelf life, and it still is a good blog, essentially saying that Chinese government will do some policies, but it will do enough to make the worst is avoided, but it will not do the U.S. style big bang kind of stimulus. So I think that's still the best baseline for China. On Chinese currency, we commented in last episode that from technical factors like momentum and volatility, our multi-factor strategies is actually hedged for the Chinese currency, but that is mainly to reduce risk, not like a one-sided bet on currency losing value, mainly because China, the system, just guarantees that the Central Bank of China can manage currency using a lot of tools that other countries probably much less willing to do, such as asking exporters to sell dollars, and then because China is still net export positive, or short squeeze short sellers, or squeezing short sellers if there are significant of them. So again, I think that's that just shows that for when it comes to China, data is important, obviously, but it's data and People's Daily, which is the main PR state media, and the local media, and also what's going on in local governments. Sometimes it just charts and and tables of data on China, and is not enough to quite to get what's the local complexity is. So I think these kind of institutional setups of China is still very, very important when trying to understand China's financial market. Um, in the last 2 weeks, there was also important political news. China's ex-prime minister Li Keqiang unexpectedly passed away by a heart attack. Um, Many people set up a memorial altars as there was a shocking news because most top Chinese leaders have great healthcare teams, so they usually live quite long. And however, there are many commentators suggesting this could lead to riots and protests. I think that's a very big misread of China's current political landscape. And this has happened a couple of times because President Jiang Zemin also passed away within the last year. And historically, funerals is a way, is one way the populace express um, this, disagreement or, or unhappiness with the government. But uh, after, after two big funeral events, historically has become uh, quite unmanageable. Um, the government has become a little bit standardized in terms of handling past officials' funerals. So I don't think that. I think all along was, I don't believe this will be a significant things on the street, but I think a lot of people outside China were kind of I think their read on China is not is a misread, because sometimes when you read news outside China, you tend to read more news that's people are unhappy with the party, and a lot of local news where actually people just happy with the party don't get into the headlines, particularly in the U.S. media. So I think that sometimes skews people's view as if the party is in constant collapsing mode, which is definitely not the baseline in China right now. Obviously, things can change, but that's a significant misread. I think that's a good example of things that there's a disconnect between what's going on locally versus what's being reported. I think in terms of other reportings, we are very happy that, thanks for people who've give us feedback. I welcome engagements that help both all of us to learn more about China and Asia Pacific. And I think, the Asia Pacific APEC meeting in San Francisco is definitely a good place for people to understand where, Asia Pacific is 75% of emerging market. Well, sometimes on social media tends to fall in the hole of personal attacks. I'm grateful for many anonymous people who've provided information and insights. I was not academically trained to analyze China, but fortunately, with some humility and hard work, I'm glad so far on several China-related issues. I've given good insight. So please, follow us on Twitter. Check out our website at wisdomtree.com, the US site. Check out our blog. We also have several podcasts that might be useful for you, particularly on, Fed. We have a lineup of, for example, Japan strategies that has gained a significant following of dividend-weighted Japanese equity plus currency hedging. I think in terms of currency hedging, I've also had several blogs which explains nowadays in every country it has to be thought about as an emerging country, except the U.S. U.S. is very special because it has a reserve currency. So if you're interested in any of these topics, please give us feedback, and thank you. Very happy to bring you this episode. Thanks.